You're listening to Murder Not Murdering with Aaron,
And Autumn,
a true crime podcast about murder and murdering.
but we are not murderers.
And we are back at Murder Not Murdering with Aaron and
Autumn.
that's us. Welcome back, everybody. It's been a second. Sorry, our episode was delayed this week, but both Autumn and I got sicknesses. So unfortunately, we had to
Life
delay.
happened.
Life happened. And
You
weirdly,
did not
both
want
of
to
us.
hear us. Yeah, you did not want to hear us in that state. Like, at
No,
all.
no, it
would
was
not
not
have been
great.
good. No.
But I'm glad we're back. I feel like I wrote my case a minute ago. So we're all going to get to experience it together at the same time.
Woohoo.
Yeah. Any new news, Autumn? What's up with you?
I get to babysit my grandson tomorrow night.
Well, that's exciting.
I'm very excited.
Yes, Autumn is
Yep.
obsessed.
I am. I cannot get enough of him. He's so cute. He's coming over to Mimi and Papa's, and we will be watching him while his parents go out for the night.
That's nice. Date nights are always a fun thing. I just had a little bit of a date night, sort of. Josh and I went to our 15-year anniversary party at the Southgate roller rink. So that was kind of fun. It was nice to see a lot of people we hadn't seen in a long time, but it was nice to be at an event together because usually one or the other is there. So it was really nice and crazy to think that I've been in business for 15 years. That's just mind-blowing to me.
That is mind-blowing. Congratulations, Southgate.
Thanks. I'll take it for all of the whole place. Thank you. Yeah, it
You're
was
the
a
only
really
one
fun
that
night.
matters. Wink, wink.
Okay. We had 4 DJs though, which were all of our house DJs. That was fun. Josh did a set, I did a set, and then we had DJ Nightmare, who's a good friend of mine, and DJ Hershey. So it was those are some of our more regular DJs. It was just really fun.
Tell
And
everyone what your DJ name is.
my DJ name is DJ Slayground. So you're welcome for knowing that now.
Does Josh have a DJ name?
No, he just goes by DJ
He's just
Josh.
DJ Josh. Okay,
Yep,
that's
that's
what sounds about right.
Yeah, if somebody asks him, he'll joke around and say he's DJ Mr. Slayground. Yeah. But, yeah, no, I've been DJ Slayground for several years now. I DJ every Pride skate, and then I also DJ on Tuesdays, for a hip hop R&B night. So it's fun. It gives me, that fun outlet. I love music, so it's just been great. I love it. What's your
I love
DJ
that
name,
for
Autumn?
you. I've never DJ'd a day in my life, but if I did, I would be DJ
Muffins.
False. No. DJ. Now I don't know.
No.
I was gonna say DJ Fall Season, but I mean that's not scary enough.
Why is it gotta be scary?
Because I would
You're
be
just
the
doing
thriller
horror.
DJ. I would be like the thriller DJ.
Tim always wanted to go by DJ Tanner.
Like
Yeah.
Full House.
Exactly.
That's
Again,
funny.
not that he's ever been a DJ either, so that's a thing.
I like that he picked out his DJ name though. He's one step closer than I am.
Yeah, maybe you could be like DJ Murder
DJ Murder.
or something of that. Serial
DJ Killer.
murderer. Yeah.
Serious. DJ Serially. I don't know. Honestly, I have no
nope.
idea.
Sorry, we're not going to workshop this any longer. We're not going to torture you all with this.
It's not torture. We're fun.
Yeah. I would have fast forwarded through this.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, skip it. Skip it
We're dissed.
immediately.
Okay, we're being dissed by the person who edits. We'll see if this even stays in.
Yeah.
She's bored already. Okay, get into your case.
Okay, yeah, we can get on to my case now. I am doing a famous one that you will know of, but it's pretty special because this case isn't just about the case. It became a case study, it became
Mhm.
so much more than what it is. So I'm going to jump right in because, yeah, here we go. This is called The Night Everyone Heard, the story of Kitty Genovese. There are some crimes that don't just take a life, they take on a life of their own. They grow, they change, they become something bigger than the truth. March 13th, 1964, in Queens, New York, a woman walks home from work. The city is quiet in that moment, and what happens next will be reported, misreported, studied, mythologized, and taught for generations. It's a story about apathy, about silence, about 38 witnesses who seemingly did nothing. But the truth is more complicated, and today we will get to the truth of it all. This is the story of Kitty Genovese, her life, her murder, the man who killed her, and the system that failed her in ways both real and imagined. Catherine Susan Genovese was not a symbol, not yet. She was a person, born in 1935, Brooklyn, the oldest of 5 children, raised in a working-class Italian-American family. After witnessing a brutal murder in her neighborhood as a teenager, her family moved to Connecticut. But Kitty wanted to stay in New York. She said the city made her feel alive. She was drawn to the energy. She worked at a bar and quickly rose up to management. She made a good income and was really happy. Her very Catholic parents urged her to get married, which Kitty said the thought of marriage made her feel queasy. So it wasn't really for her, but nonetheless, her parents' constant encouragement pushed her to marry, and unfortunately, but not unexpectedly, it ended in a quick annulment. Further disappointing her parents when she and a coworker were arrested for cooking the books and taking bets illegally. It was a minor offense and she paid a $50 fine, but the blowback was that Kitty lost her job over this. The good news is she was very self-reliant and charming, a perfect personality for a bartender. And she quickly was hired at Ev's 11th hour at a neighborhood bar in Hollis. A few years go by, and eventually Kitty realized that the real reason she didn't want to marry again was because she didn't have any interest in men at all. Kitty was a lesbian, and this is the early 1960s. Being openly gay was met with consequences. You could be arrested or even sent to a psychiatric hospital. Not to mention, she very well could have been disowned by her deeply Catholic Italian family. But that didn't stop Kitty from finding places where she could be more free. There was a gay lesbian scene in Greenwich Village, and she met her partner at a place called the Swing Rendezvous, which I think is a great bar name.
I would agree. I like that.
The Swing Rendezvous? Yeah, that sounds fun. Her name was Marianne Zalanko. They dated for a while, fell in love, and by 1964, they moved into an apartment in Kew Gardens, Queens. They were really happy. Friends described Kitty as warm, charismatic, beautiful, and quick-witted. She got to know her neighbors, and folks said that she was the kind of person who made people feel like they belonged. Sounds like a pretty great person to me.
Mhm.
And I'm going to take a hard turn now because we're going to start talking about the predator who stalked her, Winston Moseley. He was 29 years old, married with 3 children, a machinist, and on the surface, ordinary. But at night, he drove, looking. Later in police custody, he would describe it plainly. I just went out looking for a woman to kill. No escalation, just intent. At 3:15 a.m., Kitty left work and drives home. She parks her red Fiat near the Long Island Railroad station and begins the short walk to her apartment. Mosley follows. At first, at a distance, then closer. Her apartment entrance was in the back of the building, so she has to walk down an alley to get there. Then, she must have sensed him because she turns, speeds up, and then runs. But he catches her. He grabs her. He stabs her twice in the back with a hunting knife. And she screams, "Oh my God, he stabbed me. Please help me." The lights come on. The windows open. Robert Moser, a neighbor, shouts, "Let that girl alone," thinking that maybe she was just being harassed by a man, not knowing yet the gravity of the situation. And Mosley looks up, shrugs his shoulders, and starts walking back to his car like nothing happened. And this is where the myth begins to unravel. Kitty is not left in the street surrounded by passive witnesses. She gets up, injured, bleeding. She moves towards the rear of the building, towards the entrance, out of sight. And this matters because with the commotion quieted down, neighbors assumed whatever just happened was over. So they dispersed and went back to bed. And time passes. Accounts vary, but somewhere between 10 and 30 minutes pass. And then Mosley returns. Some neighbors claim that they saw his car return. He searches. He finds her slumped by the door, so close to safety, just a locked door behind her. This time, no interruptions. They were completely out of sight. So he stabs her again. He stabbed her 13 times, 9 times in the front of her body and 4 times in the back, once in the throat and several slashes to her right hand, which showed that those wounds were defensive. She was fighting back. In his confession, Mosley stated, "I stabbed her again, and then I finished what I came to do." And at this point, he rapes her. Lastly, he steals $49 from her and leaves her dying on the ground.
What a fucking piece of shit.
The story that was put out said that no one helped, and that's not true. Sophia Farrar hears something, not clearly, but enough. She leaves her apartment and she runs towards the sound. And she finds Kitty still alive. She holds her and cradles her in her arms. She calls for help and tells Kitty that help is on the way. Another neighbor calls the police. Now, this is where it gets confusing because there's so many different accounts and stories that have morphed over the years. Remember, there is no 911 yet. Though many of the neighbors called, most were reporting what they heard, but couldn't describe the full emergency because they couldn't see what had actually happened. The dispatcher thought that someone may have been beaten or robbed, but it didn't get the highest priority, which is crazy because one would think that someone getting beaten and robbed might do it, but no. By the time they figure out the gravity of the attack, it had been 40 minutes since the beginning, and it took another 30 minutes for an ambulance to come. Kitty is transported, but at that point, it had been too long, and sadly, Kitty dies en route due to a punctured lung, and she suffocated to death. Police begin canvassing, but the focus shifts quickly, not to the attacker, but to Mary Ann Zelonko. Mary Ann is woken up by a pounding on her door. It's 4 a.m., and so she cautiously opens it because you don't know who the hell's banging on your door. And a police officer tells her that Kitty had been attacked, that she's on the way to the hospital, but she's lost a lot of blood, and it doesn't look like she's going to make it. It's heart-wrenching. And then as they're speaking, another police officer approaches and informs her that Kitty had passed away. The world that she knew, the one that she knew existed just hours earlier, and the life that they had built together was gone. Kitty was 28 years old. Before grief even has time to settle, before shock has a chance to fully land, Marianne is questioned, not comforted. And it was invasive. The questions focus on their relationship, their living arrangement, and their sexuality. At one point, she's asked to describe their personal life in detail, to define their love to people who saw it as suspicious and even deviant. Instead of being treated as the person closest to Kitty, the one who knew her best, she becomes briefly a problem to solve. They interrogated her for 6 hours.
Oh my God.
And while this is extremely fucked up, what it's doing in the sense of an investigation is losing valuable time. A woman just lost her partner and is being traumatized. And in the meantime, Mosley continues his regular routines. So next, the funeral happens. Marianne stayed in her apartment for days trying to wrap her mind around what had gone on. At the service, Kitty's parents don't even speak to her, only adding to an already difficult moment. They were also going through grief, so I will give them a pass on that because at this point, the gruesome details of the murder were laid out and splashed across newspapers all over the city. And they had to keep seeing it over and over again. I would imagine that would be horrific.
Mhm.
By this point, police take Marianne off the suspect list because they woke her up in her apartment. As we know in many cases, the first person you look at in a murder case is the person closest to their victim, who's often their partner. But the obvious circumstances of them waking her up in the apartment, she has no blood on her, would seem to have ruled out Marianne from the very beginning. But for some reason, they just couldn't let it go. So now it's March 18th. A man witnesses someone carrying a TV out of his neighbor's house. The man says he's helping the neighbor move, but he doesn't buy it. He calls another neighbor who confirms that the folks next door are not moving. So then he phones the police with a description of the man in his car. And this is when that neighbor wins the Best Neighbor Award because he waited for the thief to go back into the house, ran over to the car that he was loading up, and removed the distributor cap, sabotaging the vehicle. Good neighbor. Nosy, but good neighbor.
Mhm.
The robber loads up the car, and when the car wouldn't start, he casually just shuts the door and starts walking down the street. The cops are already looking for him, so they pull over when they see the man that was described, and they begin to ask him questions. This is Mosley. The police bring him in, but again, they don't know he's connected. At first, this is all about the burglary. Then the questions deepen, and something shifts. The detectives sense it, and they press. Eventually, he confesses not just to the robbery, but to many robberies. And then they realize his car also matched the description of the vehicle seen outside of Kitty's house the night of her murder. They notice he has wounds on his hands. Detective Carroll asks him about his wounds. He said he got them while cleaning the house. But then the detective says to him, and this part got my goosebumps up. He said, "No, you didn't. You got them while you were stabbing Kitty Genovese." And then Mosley gets quiet. He almost smiles and he says, "Okay, I killed her." He confesses then not just to Kitty's murder, but to others. During the interrogation, Mosley stated, "It didn't matter to me who it was. I just picked her out." And chillingly, he said, "I knew someone would see, but I just didn't think they would do anything." Mosley walks the police through the crime, step by step, calm, methodical. He reenacts the movements, points out locations. He describes the stabbing, the assault, and the return. At one point, an officer later recalled he was very matter of fact and showed no remorse. Then he also confessed to killing Annie Mae Johnson. He had shot and killed her. But Annie Mae, in all of the records, had been stabbed. When pressed, he told them, "No, I shot her." So the police exhumed the body, which had been badly burned, and the coroner realizes the holes that he assumed were stab wounds were actually bullet holes. This means that Mosley was telling the truth. Now we have a second murder victim. So here's where the media coverage changes when Martin Gainsbourg publishes a New York Times piece titled 37 who saw murder and didn't call the police. Now, instead of focusing on the murder, it became about all these neighbors who supposedly witnessed a man stalk a woman, kill her, and they all ignored it. But here's the thing. There's no evidence that any of this is true. We know they called the police. We know Sophie ran to her aid. And the number 37 was simply made up. Here's the other thing. Gainsbourg was writing the article not in bad faith, but because he was fed misinformation by his editor, who assigned the story to him. And the editor got that information from the police. They claimed that had people had called earlier, they could have saved Kitty, blaming the neighbors because they didn't prioritize the calls they originally got. So that means this whole thing is a fucking cover up. That the police got all of these phone calls, but they didn't take any of them seriously. And that's the reason why Kitty died, because she could have survived this had they gotten her to the hospital in time. So now it's June 1964, and the trial begins. The courtroom is packed, the media interest is intense. And by now, the story of the 37 witnesses has spread nationwide. The prosecution builds a clear narrative. There's premeditation, pursuit, return, and intent. They introduce Mosley's confessions. Oh, and I forgot to mention, he also confessed to killing a third woman named Barbara Kralik, who was 15 at the time of her murder. That's 3 women, which makes him a
Serial killer.
killer.
I'm not excited about him being a serial killer. I just knew the answer, and that's what I was
Yes.
excited about.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yes.
So the prosecutors have forensic evidence, and they also have witness accounts. A key point is that none of this was spontaneous. These were deliberate acts of violence. The defense doesn't argue innocence, though, because he confessed to multiple murders really quickly. But what they do is argue insanity. They present that Mosley was mentally disturbed, unable to control his impulses, a product of psychological dysfunction. Mosley testifies he's calm, he's detached, and at one point, he states, "I just couldn't help myself." But under cross-examination, that claim fractures. Prosecutors highlight that he returned to the scene. He made efforts to avoid detection, and he had an ability to recall all the details clearly, all signs of awareness of control. So during the psychiatric testimony, there are conflicting expert opinions. Some say that he's sane. Others argue diminished capacity, but the jury sees exactly what it is: calculation and awareness. The jury deliberates not long, and they come back with a verdict of guilty, and Winston Mosley is sentenced to death. But in 1967, New York's death penalty laws are overturned. So Mosley's sentence is commuted to life in prison. He will then spend decades in prison. He attempts an escape. He gets recaptured. Then he applied for parole in 2015 and was denied because he still showed no remorse for the murders. And eventually he dies in custody in 2016. Not that long ago. Now we're going to go on to the deep dive of the media myth. So the New York Times headline said 37 who saw murder didn't call police. It was powerful and clear and very wrong. Later investigations reveal that many witnesses heard all of the parts. Some did misinterpret the events, but many of them called the police, and one person did intervene. The number 38 then becomes symbolic because it was 37 witnesses and one person that helped. Psychologists later noticed that the case was exaggerated to illustrate a phenomenon called the bystander effect, meaning individuals are less likely to help a victim when others are present. In Kitty's case, it's that someone would do the right thing so they could ignore what was happening. Of course, this was quickly disproved because, again, we have all of that information, right? This case is studied then in criminology and psychology classes to this day because this case went from a horrific murder to a social experiment and a commentary on society.
Mhm.
It became about all of these people who ignored this awful thing happening. And it would have been such a relief to the family to have known that she was not ignored and people cared. But unfortunately, her parents passed before they found out all this information. Now, before this case, like I said, there was no universal emergency number, no 911. But after this happened, momentum builds. In 1968, 911 is introduced, a direct line for emergencies, a system shaped in part by failure. The truth is not as clean as the myth, not as shocking, but more human. People heard something. Some looked, some hesitated, but they did act. And that's the part often forgotten. And then Kitty Genovese becomes a symbol, but she wasn't one. She was a person, a life interrupted, a story rewritten, and a reminder that in a moment of crisis, the distance between action and inaction is often just a few seconds of doubt. Had the police taken these calls seriously, had more people called, had people maybe even gone down to see what was happening? No one knows, right? Years later, Marianne would speak about Kitty, simply not as a victim, but as who she was. She remembered her warmth, her humor, the way she filled a room, the life they were building together. And while the world outside debated numbers, 37, 38, and while headlines reduced everything to a question of witnesses and inaction, Marianne lived with something much harder. She lost the person she loved, and then she watched that loss become something else entirely, a lesson, a case study, a headline. But Kitty wasn't a headline to her. She was her love and her home. My sources were the New York Times, History.com, People Magazine, the American Psychological Association article, The Kitty Genovese Murder and Bystander Effect Myth, A&E, the documentary The Witness, trial and transcripts and court summaries, FBI and NYPD historical case summaries, Wikipedia, and Murderpedia.
My bonus son, he had that come up in his criminology class.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty famous on that. I mean, the whole thing came down to the fact that the police just covered up the fact that they did not respond to the phone calls. I mean, that's what it really but then this it really comes down to the editor, not necessarily the writer. The writer just had an assignment, which is what they did, but they did it based on the information they got from the editor. And the editor has been talked to so many times about this article, and he completely blows off the murder. And he's like, this is a commentary on society. It's not really about the murder. It's about how people ignore people when they live in big cities and assume somebody will do something. That's why they don't have
Mhm.
to. And it
Mhm.
sucks because, again, this was a real person that was murdered and her partner didn't have the love of her life any longer. Her family didn't have their daughter any longer. I mean, her brother's in the documentary. He talks a lot about who she was. And it wasn't until like to the in the 2000s when they found out that the police were the ones that fed that information.
Mhm. It's so, so,
So
so sad
it is.
because they coulda had comfort. There was someone with her when she passed. She wasn't alone.
Exactly. And Sophie, the person that sat there with her and held her, said, I hope she knew that I was there because at that point she had lost a lot of blood and she wasn't really conscious. But again, that was 40 minutes from the first phone call and 30 minutes till the ambulance got there. The
Mhm.
chances of them actually had this been called and there was an emergency line that like this is a proper emergency, who knows what would have happened. you know? But
It's
they had
so
multiple
sad.
calls, people calling saying, I hear somebody screaming outside. Someone yelled that someone was stabbed. But because they didn't actually witness it, they didn't take it seriously. And that sucks.
I'm just glad that that's not the situation anymore.
No, I'm
That
glad we have an emergency line. And even though
uh
people abuse it and, report things that are not actual
emergency,
emergencies,
yes.
but thank God we have it, right? So we can get people
Yes.
there when we need it, emergency services. I have a friend of mine who's an emergency 911 operator. And so
Did you
I
know that I took the test to be an emergency dispatcher for 911 and I was accepted and I decided not to go through with it after 1 day of training?
I did not know that. But also that would probably make me crazy. I would not be good at that job.
I realized pretty quickly. I mean, you had to take this typing test and I like obviously am. Fun fact, I am like super, super fast at typing, like unheard of fast. And so that got me in the door. And then I realized, um, this is really traumatic. No, I just don't think this is for me. I was like 20. I was
No,
like,
and, like,
no,
all the time, like,
no,
it would be a really high pressure job and that you have to, like, talk people down in real moments of
in real
crisis.
moments. And I'd be like, oh no, I'm scared too, bro. Don't open that door. Like, I
Yeah.
don't think I would be there. There's a bee? Oh, hell no. We're done. In the call. I'm sending the SWAT team.
Yeah, there's a special group of people out there that are meant to do that job, and we appreciate you, all of you emergency
Yes.
response, from the operators to the people that show up, in those moments, EMTs, all of that. Like I said, it takes a certain kind of person who can weather that all the time because it is a heavy job, right? It's the
I
same
think
thing I
so.
feel about nurses. Like, that's a special kind of person that
Yeah, it
wants to
takes a
be
special kind of
that
person.
can care for people in that kind of way, and hospice nurses and especially are a special type of, group of people. So, anyway, we want to say that we appreciate all first responders, and it's moved on to that now. But we're gonna get to Autumn's case. Autumn, why don't you lay it on us?
Sounds gross. Just saying.
Cool.
Not gonna like it.
I'm so glad you told me that.
Like no. I'm just gonna get right into it. Let's deep dive into this.
Let's get gross. Oh no, it's really gross.
No, it's not. It's just like gross, like mad gross, like not like disgusting details. I'm
Well, I
just
assumed
laughing
this was
because
disgusting details.
no, no disgusting details. This is actually really just sad.
Oh,
You're
cool.
not gonna like it. You're not gonna like it.
I never do. It's not
No,
solved, is it? Fuck you.
it's not soft.
Yep. Cool. Here we
But
go.
but next week's is solved.
Thank you. Thank
You're
God.
welcome. I know. I can't do too many in a row for you, but this one is
I'll do an
solved. So
unsolved one.
I mean, I love those. That'd be a treat for me.
Okay.
So maybe one of you can solve this for us. Although I'm pretty sure what happened. You'll probably be pretty sure what happened, but technically it is unsolved. Let's dive into this. This is the disappearance of Katelin Akens. There are moments in life that feel so routine, so completely unremarkable that we move through them without hesitation. A car ride, a goodbye, a message sent from a phone that has sent hundreds before it. And yet, sometimes those ordinary moments become the last ones that can be clearly explained. Not because something obvious happened right away, but because later, when everything is examined more closely, the details began to separate. A timeline that should be simple becomes complicated. A story that should be consistent begins to shift, and messages that should feel familiar start to feel just slightly out of place. Not enough to raise immediate alarm, but enough that once you see it, you can't unsee it. And that is where this story lives. not in a single moment, but in the space between what was said and what can actually be proven. This is the story of Katelin Akens. Katelin Akens was 19 years old, and like so many people at that age, her life was still unfolding in a way that didn't yet have a fixed shape, but was full of direction, connection, and possibility. She had relationships that mattered deeply to her. A boyfriend she stayed in close contact with, friends she kept up with, and most importantly, a relationship with her mother that was active, present, and consistent. She was not someone who disappeared from people's lives without explanation. She checked in. She responded. She maintained those lines of communication in a way that made her absence, when it came, feel immediately wrong. In November of 2015, Katelin had traveled to spend time with her mother in Spotsylvania County, Virginia. It was simply a visit, time together, something that had happened before and would have happened again. Except this time, it ended differently. November 5th begins like a transition day. Katelin is preparing to leave. She has a flight scheduled out of Washington Dulles International Airport. The plan is clear. Her stepfather, Michael Hayden, will drive her. The distance is not insignificant, roughly an hour and a half depending on traffic, but it is manageable. The kind of drive that does not raise questions. At some point that afternoon, Katelin gathers her things, her suitcase, her personal belongings, everything she needs to continue on with her plans. And she leaves the house. She gets into the vehicle, and from that point forward, everything becomes dependent on what cannot be directly verified. The drive between Spotsylvania County and Dulles Airport becomes the most important stretch of time in this entire case, because it is during this period that Katelin is last confirmed to be seen. There are no independent witnesses who can confirm her arrival at the airport. No surveillance that places her inside. No record of her moving through security, which means whatever happened before there was ever a chance for public visibility. And that realization shifts everything. Michael Hayden would later tell investigators that the drive was uneventful, that they arrived at the airport without issue, that he dropped Katelin off near the terminal, and that she exited the vehicle with her luggage and walked away. On the surface, it is a simple explanation, one that could close the timeline neatly, except nothing that comes after supports it. Because when investigators begin to verify that account, they find nothing to support it. No camera footage of Katelin entering the airport, no confirmation of her presence anywhere within the terminal, no boarding pass scanned, no witness who remembers seeing her, and in a place as monitored as Dulles, that absence is not neutral. It is significant.
I mean, the amount of cameras they have at airports, somebody would have seen something.
Somebody would have seen something. And like CCTV, somewhere, something would have been caught on camera.
100%.
In the early evening hours of November 5th, messages begin to come from Katelin's phone. These messages are sent to both her boyfriend and her mother. At first glance, they appear to provide an explanation. They suggest that she missed her flight, that she is upset, that she needs time to think. In one message, she indicates frustration, something along the lines of having missed a flight and needing space to process. In another, she suggests she may stay with a friend. There is an implication of emotional distance, a pulling back. But when those closest to her read these messages, something feels off. Not dramatically, not in a way that immediately signals danger, but in a subtle, persistent way. The wording feels slightly different than how she typically communicated. The emotional tone feels less like her, more detached, more abrupt, and importantly, the messages do not lead to any follow up. There is no continued conversation, no updates, no resolution, and then the phone goes silent. And I totally know what they're talking about because I can tell the style you text, the style I text, how Dustin texts.
Totally.
Like my
Absolutely.
closest friends, you can tell when something's off if they're talking a little different. You're like, hello? Who is this? Like, you know right away. Especially in this day and age when we communicate so heavily with text messages. Everyone has their own style. When investigators examined Katelin's phone activity, they begin to uncover something that directly contradicts the original account. Because phones do not just send messages, they connect to towers, they leave behind location data, and that data tells a story. A story that does not place Katelin at the airport. Instead, her phone activity suggests movement in areas that are not consistent with Dulles. Areas that align more closely with rural parts of Virginia. Areas that are not part of any logical route for someone who has just been dropped off for a flight. And this becomes one of the most critical pieces of evidence because it introduces a reality that cannot easily be explained away. At some point during the investigation, Katelin's suitcase is discovered. Not at the airport, not with her, but abandoned in a remote area of Stafford County, Virginia. This is not a minor detail because a suitcase represents intention. It represents travel, continuation, and its presence in a local location disconnected from the airport. Suggests interruption, something that prevented the plan from continuing as intended. At this stage, the investigation begins to move in a different direction because the initial assumption that Katelin made it to the airport no longer holds. And when that assumption is removed, the timeline collapses inward. Back to the drive, back to the last confirmed person who saw her, back to the space where there are no independent witnesses, no cameras, no verification, only a version of events that does not align with the evidence. Search teams began working through the areas where her phone activity and belongings suggest she may have been. This is not easy terrain. Wooded areas, uneven ground, places that are difficult to cover thoroughly, even with trained teams. Canine units are brought in. Volunteers join. Search grids are established, but time is already working against them. Because with each passing day, the ability to locate clear evidence diminishes. And still, they continue. Because stopping is not an option. Throughout all of this, Katelin's family remains at the center of the search, advocating, pushing for attention, ensuring that her case does not fade into the background. Because the hardest part of cases like this is not just the absence of answers, it is the risk of being forgotten. And they refuse to let that happen. As time goes on, two primary theories remain. The first suggests that Katelin left on her own. that messages reflect a decision to step away. But this theory struggles to explain the physical evidence. The phone data, the suitcase, the sudden and complete silence, and perhaps most importantly, it does not align with who she was. The second theory is that something happened before she ever reached the airport, that the plan was interrupted, that the timeline presented was not accurate, and that the truth exists somewhere within that missing stretch of time. There's a particular kind of grief that exists in cases like this because there is no clear ending, no moment where everything stops and becomes defined. Instead, there is a constant state of uncertainty, a loop of questions without resolution. For her mother, that means living with the last time she saw her daughter, not knowing if it was truly goodbye. For those who loved her, it means holding on to a version of Katelin that never got the chance to continue forward. 19 years old. A life paused, without explanation. For years, this case remained unsolved. Until recently. More than a decade after Katelin disappeared, Michael Hayden was arrested. Not for Katelin's disappearance, but on unrelated charges.
Autumn, real quick, do you want to say what his charges were? Because they've released it.
It was so new when I was writing it. Hold on.
It's sex predator issues. And they said that I was reading just now because I was looking up a picture of her, and sometimes I do that because it helps. But they said that he was brought up on multiple sex related charges. And it has to do with children. His house has been raided by the FBI.
Michael Hayden was arrested on April 10th, which is real time here. And he was arrested on child sex charges. And one of the victims was his stepdaughter, Katelin Akens, who has been missing for more than a decade. So I'm really hopeful that this will bring closure to the family. I have always felt that he had a hand in this.
I mean, it makes sense, right? It
It
adds
does
up.
make sense. It
And
makes
even more
it's
so knowing that,
disgusting.
even more so knowing that they're investigating this actively.
Right. And they stated that she was one of his victims. I mean, honestly, it seems like she could have been killed by him because she was threatening to tell.
I mean, most likely it could be that, or just that she finally was strong enough to say no. You know what I mean?
It's so crazy because I started writing this before he was arrested.
Yeah.
Isn't that just insane timing? Like,
That is.
wow.
I always look up the picture because then it gives me a little bit more of like a connection.
That's so sad.
I know.
Katelin Akens did not simply disappear. She existed in relationships, in conversations, and plans that were still unfolding. And whatever happened on November 5th, 2015, whatever truth exists between what was said and what can be proven, is still out there, waiting. And someone knows it. My sources were Spotsylvania County Sheriff's Office, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the Charlie Project, NamUs, NBC News, CBS News, ABC News, Inside Edition, The Washington Post, the Doe Network, and then the ABC 7 News that we just looked up while we were doing this case.
Yeah. I mean, it's all happening like in real time. That was 5 days ago. I mean, crazy.
That's so crazy.
But I mean, that's positive. That's like at least it's in some direction that's, some things are happening. You know what I mean? I know that there's that FBI raided his house and a couple other organizations did, like the Virginia police or whatever it was. So, I mean, it just means that something is happening. And this guy, I mean, he's already in trouble for sex related charges. I mean, he's not a good person. So I hope that in some way they find some sort of pieces of evidence, to link it. Just at
Mhm.
least like we always
I
want
mean, everything this
resolution,
man
right?
has said is a fucking lie. I mean, like, transparently, like, what the fuck? Oh, I dropped her off at the airport. No proof. Oh, she was with her suitcase. They find it in the woods. She's sending text messages to her boyfriend and her mother that are not anything like she would ever. You you piece of shit. And I honestly don't know. I couldn't find if the mom and him are still together. I sure fucking hope not.
I hope not. I hate when that happens.
I mean, and if they were, I hope she's done with him after this.
She better be. I mean,
And I hope he's locked up for life. Let's be real here. Regardless if they find him guilty of killing his stepdaughter, for all of the things that they are charging him with, he deserves to be locked up for life.
exactly. I mean, there's no tolerance for any of that.
No tolerance. Disgusting.
Well, I'm glad you had a quick update at the end because that's nice to at least have something heading towards resolution, right? You know me, I
Mhm.
want it all completely solved. I don't want to have
Yes.
anything hanging in the wind. I
I
want to
know.
know.
I I mean, this one to like truly, there's no and I mean, obviously, I'm not the judge and jury here, but there's no doubt in my mind that he played a hand in what happened to her. No doubt in my
I
mind.
agree with
From
you.
the second the case came out, the second he was like, "Oh yeah, I dropped her off and blah blah blah." No, you didn't. No, you didn't.
Again,
Prove
like
it.
we said, like there's CCTV, there's loads of stuff
Mhm.
that would I mean, an airport is a busy place with a shit ton of witnesses. Y- I'm sorry.
I agree. Like
Yeah,
I just
well,
we'll keep you guys updated. I'm gonna be
yeah.
following this. Like that's wild that Aaron looked it up and I didn't even know. I mean, as we said, we've both been pretty sick, so I wrote the case and we weren't able to record, and I didn't even know that
It was
the
5 days
charges were
ago.
released. Yeah.
Yeah. So, that's exciting. At least there's something, like I said, heading in a good direction. Um, and I mean, you know, there you are. So, we will have new episodes out on Mondays, especially now that we're healthier. So, you'll be
Yes.
getting your new episodes. Um, Thank you so much for listening to us. Make sure to follow us on Instagram at Murder Not Murdering and go to our TikTok, mnm.pod, as well as our Reddit, our subreddit,
Our
Murder Not
subreddit.
Murdering. And yeah, we will have a new episode for you soon. We apologize for the inconvenience of not getting your murders in time, but we will be more on it. And thank you for being so patient with us, our murderful
Yes.
friends,
Our murderful friends.
as Autumn coined, murderful
Yes.
friends.
Murderful friends.
That's our thing now, I guess. All
It
right.
is.
We will see you next week. Thanks again. Bye.
Bye.